focus of what I want to talk about tonight, and I want to try and keep it, which for me is totally unusual, short and sweet. I want to keep this to around about 30 to 40 minutes if I can, which probably means we'll still be here in about 4 hours time, of course. And so I'll try and do what I'm telling you about tonight. I want to try and focus. So difficult times for all of us, difficult times ahead for everybody. And realistically, what I want to think about is how do we get you focused? Because one of the key things that we can do, and regardless of whether we're stuck in the middle of coronavirus, and I say this will be put up for eternity, so it will be relevant for you if you're in the middle of a normal season. If you're in the middle of winter, if you're in the middle of summer, it's all about getting focused right in your training. And that's really what I want to chat to you guys about tonight. For those of you that don't know me, I'm going to keep this really short and sweet. So that's me. Well, I had no hair there either. So what's this flashing up here? That's fine. Okay. So that's me. Back in 2015, I not for the first time represented Great Britain at World Triathlon Championships. So I went out to Chicago, had a reasonably good race. But anyway, so I pretend to be an athlete at times. My background is I have an undergraduate degree in sports science from Chichester, and I then did my PhD in exercise physiology at the University of Cape Town with people like Tim Noakes and Professor John Hawley. Having left Cape Town, I then went and taught sports science and was senior lecturer at Kingston University before I took a readership post at the University of Wolverhampton. Now, that's all in the dark and distant past, and I must have left Wolverhampton, I think, something like 20 years ago now. So it is a long time back, but that's the academic background that I've come from. So slightly more recently, I'd say recently, for the last 17, 18 years, I've been the director of Sports Test. And the whole idea is giving you guys information to improve your performance and improve the way that you can compete and the way that you want to take your training. Through that time, I helped look after the South African Olympic Tri Squad pre-Sydney 2000. And I've worked with runners, cyclists, triathletes, football players, Formula One drivers, you name it, I've pretty much worked with them. But I range from complete amateurs right through to Olympic and World Championship level athletes that have come and seen me in the past. Back at the time, I was accredited by British Association of Sport and Exercise Physiology, and I was a fellow American Sports Medicine. So again, just gives you a background about who I am. And yeah, I still pretend to be an athlete. So there's me on one of the climbs, nice little 16% ramp coming up from Denia in Spain that we used to go and do our training camp. So training camp this year was going to be somewhere different. And of course, it's all been cancelled. But hopefully we'll be back either in October this year if we can fly again, or certainly in March of next year if everything's safe to travel to Spain. So, right, moving on to the key sign. Where are we now? Which way do we go? Are you as lost as I am? I have a nightmare for my athletes, because clearly over the last 6 weeks or so, there have been that many athletes who have lost their key targets. And I don't want to upset people, but if I look at what's going on and I look at the news and you think the Berlin Marathon has been cancelled completely, there are talks that in France there are no major sporting events that are going to happen until September. So although the Tour de France hasn't been cancelled, the dates that it had been moved to still are in August. So what's going to happen with the Tour? Therefore the Etape. There was a post on BBC and it went under the radar on Sunday because it was Marathon Day on Sunday, that suggested London Marathon, which has been rescheduled for the 4th of October, might be an elite only race. So there might be no mass participation race. So we're all lost, we're all confused, we're all unclear about where we're going. And I think what the guys that I've been working with have said to me, and it's been really, really valuable, is that having the interaction of a coach or having the interaction of somebody that can talk to them and help steer them, it keeps them focused, it keeps them with direction, and it keeps them with clarity. And that's really what I want to talk about tonight, is how do we get that focus? How do we get that clarity when all others are losing their heads around them? And potentially when we don't know whether our key target race is actually going to happen, or happen on the date that we expected, or happen at all. So those are the things that we've got to think about. So we might not know which way we're going, but we can still see a solution through all of this. And that's really what I want to be thinking about with you guys tonight. And tonight, it's really going to be a snapshot into the way that my brain works and the way that I work with athletes and the way that I work with individuals in setting up training plans and setting up performance enhancements. If you guys find this valuable, let me know, and we'll come and do some follow-ons on, far more depth in different aspects. But tonight, I really want to focus on the first two elements on what I would view as really important for performance enhancement. The first one is the planning and organisation. Now, the rug has been pulled from under our feet at the moment, but to me, that doesn't matter. Once you've got that in place, we can start to look at structuring the training program. Now, again, what I want to do is I will use the details on structuring the training plan in much, much more detail in another session, but I'll just skim on it tonight. And then obviously, to get optimal performance, we've got to think about rest and recovery, and we've got to think about optimizing nutrition as well. So, if all those factors come together, that's where we get peak performance. And so those are the factors that I would want you as an athlete to think about in your own racing, in your own training, in your own targets. And it's how do we now, possibly not knowing where the targets are going to be, but how do we now get those phases right for you guys? So first thing I always look at, and I sort of bring my mouse up here, I look at you, the athlete. Everybody's different. And at the moment, I can see there's sort of 15, 18 of you online. At the moment, I can't see a list of the names, so I don't know who's here. I don't know who's heard this before, who hasn't. But I view every athlete as being a complete individual. And if I was doing this seminar in a room with 20 of you, we could just look around. We can see that everybody's different. Well, I've got me. The dogs aren't even here at the moment, but I've got me in here, so I can't look and sort of gauge that. But rest assured, everybody is different. Everybody responds differently. And as a result of that, everybody's training needs to be slightly different. Now, it might be that you, the athlete, have the same competition as somebody else, but still the way that we underpin all of that is completely different. So the training that you should be doing is specific to you, the athlete. So rather than having a generic training plan that comes from a book or is free off the shelf from somewhere, it really should be focused to you. It should be focused to what you need on a daily basis, how you rest and recover on a daily basis, what your work commitments are, family commitments are, stress levels are, how you respond, how you warm up, how you cool down, how you recover from a session, all of these factors that we need to look at, and we need to build that in to get the optimal performance for you. So these are the things that we've got to think about and focus on in order to get you that optimal performance. And this is the things that I will work with the guys that I coach and potentially the guys that I test. Now, clearly we can't test at the moment, but there are other things that I can look at. I can look at heart rate responses in relation to power, or heart rate responses in relation to pace, and we can get an understanding whether an athlete is actually performing well or not. So realistically, we talk about you, the athlete, being individual and unique, and then the training plan that you need to take you to that competition, again, being individual and unique rather than generic. Now, again, we can look at that and we can say, well, the needs of one competition, depending on what we're looking at down here with the event, the needs of one competition are completely different. So again, I'm going to pluck because I don't know who's online. If I pluck the example of a triathlete might be doing anything from a super sprint through to a sprint to one of my guys, and I don't know whether he's online tonight or not, that is looking and has done several double Ironmans and is looking up at now stepping up and doing a triple Ironman. He hasn't frightened me and told me he's doing a 5 Ironman back to back, but the triple's a big enough scary response. Now, the training you need as a triathlete is then different from the swim element to the bike element to the run element, and that then differs according to the race distance that you're doing. And then we look at different courses, and I've used the example of looking at the bike at Ironman Wales and looking at the bike at Switzerland, and actually see that Switzerland is almost as flat as a pancake. It's almost as flat as my desk, whereas Wales is hill, hill, hill. And so we've got to look at the training that athlete needs in relation to that competition. Now, we can go in the opposite direction. We can almost say much more sterile environment. We maybe talk about an 800-meter track runner, but still the training that 800-meter track runner might need is going to depend on the level of competition and what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve, whether they're just looking to try and target times and therefore they're almost going into their little bubble and running a race and running for a time trial style, or whether they're going to be in an event where there's lots of competition and that race might become quite tactical. So again, the training that individual needs could be very, very specific to them. And again, this comes back to you, the athlete. In addition to that, this training will only go well if you underpin it by good, solid nutrition, because if you don't feed the body appropriately, then you're not going to be able to recover properly, therefore you're not going to be able to train properly. And likewise, if we don't get the nutrition targeted well enough when it comes to competition day, you're not going to perform at your peak. And there's a whole other myriad of things that go on in between that. So these are the factors that we're looking at to get the best performance for you. And I think if you sit down and you use maybe some of the spare time that you've got at the moment, where you actually spend an hour or 2 hours or a block of time, a couple of hours, and even thinking about these factors of where are you going, what do you need, this is where we're going to get the better performance from you. Of course, I've got an itchy nose now just to really annoy things. Excuse me. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm looking at what factors affect your performance. And then if I look at that at the performance model, and I'm going to do something really naughty, I'm going to sit on my feet because I like to jump around, and I usually stand up and talk at these things rather than sit at a desk. I look at this performance model, and again, look at this as a stylized, car, stylized Formula One high performance motor. And what we're considering here is all the factors that might go into the performance for that vehicle. So if your Formula One car is going to go and do a 2-hour race, how is that engine structured, that engine tuned to if it was going to go and do a 24-hour race? Or if it was a dragster where it's doing, 200 miles an hour down a 1-mile strip. So that engine size, type and tuning is different according to the race that car's doing. But also, if we look at a Formula One car, the engine is retuned and remanufactured almost for every single event that it goes and does. So we've got to think about that for you, the athlete. How do we modify your engine, your heart, your lungs, your muscles in order to get optimal performance from what we're trying to achieve? We look at other factors. We then look at the nutrition, fuel type and economy. We look at your weight. And one of the critical things that we can maybe be working on at the moment when you're out of relatively good weather outside but out of competition is how can we get your weight down? And again, as a rule of thumb, every kilo that you lose as a marathon runner is worth 2 minutes over your marathon time. So as I'm sat here and I'm about 9 kilos overweight, that's a heck of a lot of time that I'd be giving away if I was looking for race performance. So potentially, if you've still got an autumn marathon that's on the cards, these are the things that you should now be thinking about working towards in order to optimize your performance. Then we've got all the other factors that we can work on. Something that probably isn't done enough is working on technique. As a runner, can you be working on technique? So I'm doing a lot of treadmill running at the moment. I'm daddy daycare while Becky's at work, and so I'm doing a lot of my running on treadmill. I absolutely hate it, but one of the benefits is I can actually think about posture, I can think about arm movement, I can think about cadence, I can think about head position, chest position, and how I'm actually running, and my style and my technique, and think about forefoot planting, and I can think about my turnover. All of this has a direct impact on my performance. So it's focusing on the little things at the moment that actually make big difference later on. So these are the things that we need to look at, and these are the things we need to work on. Then we've got psychological status. And again, let's look at what we're being told. At the moment, we're still on lockdown. Getting out and exercising, doing that hour to 2 hours of exercise a day for psychological status can be absolutely phenomenal. So use that to boost your mind, your focus, and give you a bit of a release if you can. These are all the things that we should be doing. But actually, let's flip it around and say, well, it doesn't matter where we are in the world or in the year or in the cycle of, everything goes back to normal. Exercise can be so beneficial. But again, if you turn up to your event and that is not switched on because you've not done the right training and it's not right focused, you're not going to get the performance you want. So your performance can be impacted by psychological status. And then there are things on the bike where, for instance, reaction time, but I can see that running as well. And I've had one of my worst injuries where I wasn't looking at the ground properly, went over on my ankle, and I didn't react quickly enough to seeing a rock that I was about to stand on. And then we look at efficiency, economy, aerodynamics as playing an important part in the further an athlete goes. So these are all the factors that we've got to think about when we're actually looking at athletic performance for you guys and how we're going to try and get you to improve. So if we think about all this, this is where we can now start making gains. So these are the things that most athletes don't think about, don't take the time to think about. And often I would say to people, this is a seminar that I'd often do, and I'd use a few of these slides in October time and say, well, now's the time in October where you're putting your winter training together. Well, we're almost should be doing, I think, in my mind, winter training, but with slightly better weather outside, because we don't know when the next races are. So it's about using the spare time, using our spare mental capacity, using the focus to actually get these things right, so that when we do start racing again, you're ahead of the game. Because there are a lot of people I'm hearing about that have completely lost their focus. They've don't know when race is going to be, can't be bothered to train, with structure, or have gone the opposite. They've ended up training indoors and they're on Zwift the whole time, and they're just smashing it and smashing it and smashing it. Before they know, they're going to get ill. So it's about being sensible, focused, and disciplined in what you do. So it really comes down to understanding your priorities. And, the daft example that I've got here is, me on the floor, my bike's more important, and I've got athletes that will spend thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on components to make their bike lighter or save a watt here or there, and actually don't look at their body properly. Don't think about, well, if I spent a bit more time stretching, if I spent a bit more time on my nutrition, if I spent a bit more time focusing on my heart rate training zones or my power zones properly, or, looked at my outcomes and my recovery levels, or looked at my resting heart rate, how much better could they be? So it's all about you guys understanding your priorities, getting that focus so that you can start to work to improve. So whilst your kit is important, and I've got my, and I don't think they're next door in the garage. I've got my pink Nike shoes that are really bouncy, and they're fabulous. But I almost made a pact to myself. I needed to run under 36 minutes before I went out and bought them. And I was naughty. I ran 36:12 and went out and bought them. But again, there's got to be, if the training's not going right and you're not at the optimal weight, why go and spend thousands of pounds on something that isn't going to help you? You're far better off to spend some time, some focus on you. Now, whether that's using me to help you and coach you and direct you, whether it's coming in for a physiological assessment when we can start that back up again, or whether it's just talking to somebody, your local coach at your club, but it's spending that time on you to make sure that you're improving in the way that you want to. And the daft example I've got is you've gone out and you spend £10,000-12,000 on the best possible bike with the lightest wheels. And, the example here, I should have an oversized, pulley chain on the back and this, that, and the other. And, it should be, is it, I don't even know, this is Di2, what it is. But you've gone out and spent £10,000-12,000 on the bike. And okay, I've been a bit tongue in cheek here, and you've got your ultimate body. So, and again, the guy's not on that bike, so I'm taking the mickey a little bit. Yes, I've stretched the photo a bit. It's good, he's out, he's exercising. We should be applauding this. But again, it's amazing how many people come and see me who have gone and spent a fortune on bike, and their body is secondary. And it's about starting to turn that round, starting to understand that this piece of apparatus, and whether it's your running shoes, whether it's your bike, whether it's your wetsuit, that is not the be all and the end all. It's getting this piece of equipment here. It's getting heart, lungs, and legs all operating in the best possible way. Getting that focus right is what's going to give you the performances that you want. So one of the first things that I do with anybody that comes in to see me for a test is looking at their strengths and weaknesses. And this is an exercise that a lot of people find very, very hard to do. And I put up an example here of one of the sheets that I typically use. So, this would be for a cyclist. And, I've just asked them about, what they're good at, road racing sportives. Do they time trial? What they're good at, what they're bad at? Do they off-road race? Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't off-road race. When you think, well, okay, is that now a weakness? Because if you did a bit more off-road, would that actually strengthen up bike handling skills up here? Would it strengthen up upper body and core? So we've got to look at these all in balance. Road racers often don't time trial. Well, don't like to, you don't know how to, you don't find it, so again, it's looking at all these elements. And we can break that down even further. So we might say, what are you good at and bad at when it comes to training? We could add a different column in on racing, mental strengths and weaknesses, other factors. What's your job doing? Have you got a supportive family? How much time have you got? All of these factors. And it's worthwhile considering, as I say on the left here, a wide range of factors across the whole of the events that you might be considering to do. So what am I good at? What am I bad at? And once we know that, and once we started to think about where we're going with stuff, we can start to get a much, much better understanding of where you need to be in your training. And from doing that, we can then start working out and saying, right, okay, let's start looking at some goals and aims. And I generally, although I've got this sort of, I've gone immediate, short term, medium term, long term, I try and work with a long term goal with somebody. So one of the young ladies on the phone last night is looking for a selection for a fairly big event, which is next summer. So that's the long term goal. The long term goal is to have her at peak fitness next summer. Now, the medium term goal then is, right, what selection races have we got? Now, okay, the rug's been pulled from under our feet at the moment, and the selection races that we knew about July, August, September time are now no longer there, or potentially not there. So we're now thinking about, well, selection races potentially going to be almost as late as possible, which is going to be April next year, which still means that come June time, we're going to be at peak form. But right, where do we need to be in terms of medium term? Now, that might also be, well, before we get peak race goal here, we want to be at optimal body weight here. We want to have better cardiovascular endurance. We want to have better volume in our training. We want to be better in flexibility. All of these factors are the medium-term goal. They're going to ensure we achieve this long-term goal. And that means that we've then got to look at a short-term goal. So what's the purpose of training this month? What's the purpose of training this week? What are we trying to achieve in those training sessions that we're planning to do over the next 2 or 3 weeks? So we've got a vision in our mind of where we're going. Now, at the moment, it's very difficult for people because they haven't got that race. And I think one of the problems that I see with so many athletes, and this perhaps is why I'm coping with it better than a lot, is there are so many athletes that when they first come to see me are always only looking at sort of a short to medium term goal. So it might be, oh yeah, I've got an Ironman in 16 weeks time, or I've got a marathon in 12 weeks time, or I've got a 10K in 10 weeks time. And they're looking at something that's very, very short term. Whereas again, I would generally say to an athlete that if we know your peak race, your peak event you were looking to target is in June or July time, then actually we should be starting to train for that all the way back in the previous September. And if you're at a high enough level, we should actually be looking at a 15 to 18 month build to that. So I'm looking at the moment going, you know what, for my athletes, for the guys that I work with, if the whole of 2020 is written off as a season, which I'm sure it won't be, I'm sure there'll be some smaller events that will be able to run, hopefully sooner rather than later. But if the whole of 2020 is written off, to me, that doesn't matter, because it just means we're going to have a much stronger 2021. And we use the whole of this season to build towards achieving these medium-term goals so that next year is an absolute fabulous season. And so what it means is in the short term, for this week's training, for this month's training, it's now about staying fit, staying healthy, but we're looking at what those targets are going to try and take us. But that also means that every time you train, in my mind, you should have an immediate goal. What is the purpose of today's training session? Have I prepped my nutrition for immediately after my session? Have I prepped my nutrition for before my session? Is my bike clean? Is it working? Are my running shoes, my spikes been changed? How am I doing drill work? What am I doing this session for? Rather than blindly going, oh, weather's nice, I'm going to go out for a long bike ride or a long run. No. What are you doing in today's training session? And why are you doing it today? Not why are you doing it tomorrow, or where's it going to fit in the week? And I had someone email me the other day, and I don't know whether they're online or not, and you won't guess who it is by saying this individual was hoping to ride Haute Route, which was potentially going to be in August. I think, looking at what's going on in France, it's now likely to be cancelled, or it's going to be moved back into September time. And he just said to me, well, can't you just give me 4 or 5 key sessions a week and I can move them around as and where I need to? No. I can do, but that's pointless, because what we're trying to do when I put your training together is I put your training together in a certain way that we've got building blocks that today's session leads on to tomorrow's session, and then tomorrow's session has got a purpose in the whole week and the whole structure. And when I sit and plan an athlete's training out on a Sunday night or a Monday morning, I will have sat, being typically boring as I am, and at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening, I'm watching the week's weather forecast, because there's no point in my mind of me planning you a training session on Thursday if the weather forecast on Thursday is it's going to be chucking it down all day, and you've got a 2-hour long session to do in pouring down weather. So I try and factor in other impacts as well. Now, an immediate session can be changed. So if you've gone out and the plan was to do X, and yesterday's session didn't go well, or it was cancelled, or you've woken up and the little one's ill, or the cat's thrown up over your feet, or the boss has called you into work, or you've run late at a meeting, it doesn't mean that session can't be changed. But you've then got to look at it in the view of the short-term week. So where does that session now go? Was it a vital session that needs to stay, or can it be moved within that short-term focus? So those are the things that we've really got to think about. And so generally I'd say, what's your long-term? Now, for me, if you've got a race in 2020, that's not a long-term goal at the moment. That's a medium-term goal. So if the calendar opens up in 2020, that's a medium-term goal. That's brilliant. That's a race goal. But actually, we should be thinking about, at the moment where everyone's losing their focus and everyone's losing their heads, is to come away from race goals and performance targets and think about physiological targets. So can I reduce my body fat? Can I increase my cadence? Can I reduce my body weight? Can I go longer? Can I put more training hours in? Can I improve my flexibility? All of the things that are measurables, that are performance related, that are ultimately going to mean on race day you're going to perform better than the person next to you. These are all the things that you can take positive focus on at the moment and work towards, as opposed to trying to target an event that may be pulled. And if we get your training plan right, if all of a sudden something pops up onto the calendar, it's then about tweaking your training that in 2 or 3 weeks you can be pretty sharp, but as it's not a long-term goal, you don't need to be a 100% firing. So that's what we've got to look at the moment. That's how, in my mind, you keep your focus. And in doing that, what I generally do is I plan training phases, and I'll go into this if we do if you guys want me back and you want me to do a training talk, we'll go into this on a training talk in far more detail. But I look at the volume of your training down here, and we move intensity and specificity and gets higher towards your goal event. So we look at what your goal event is, and the duration of each session would come down. So towards the back end of the training, towards the goal event, speed and power work, threshold transitional training, and down here, good solid base endurance foundation work. And again, we might turn that pyramid into a diamond and we can structure from there. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at phases. And the fitness and the duration, I'm just going to have to just do something here because can't see my own slides. Get rid of that. Come on, Gary, what are you doing? I want to go. Don't minimize that for a second. So this is partly dependent on both your fitness and the event dependency. But as a rule of thumb, what I'm looking at, that's why I couldn't see it, because I've got this down here. Sorry, guys. I told you something might go wrong. So this is what I was trying to tell you. So when we come back here, and this was the bit I was trying to find, I would often start off for the majority of endurance athletes. Again, it depends on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. But for the majority of endurance athletes, your base and your foundation training, that block might be as long as 3 to 9 months. Now, it might not, that's not exclusively only doing base work, only doing endurance work, only doing foundation work, but that's the block that we're working from. Once we've moved through that block, and this is the slide I showed you a second ago, the next phase, getting you prepped for race phase, is probably going to take fully 6 to 12 weeks. Now, again, that depends on the event that you need and what you're doing. Marathon runner won't need anywhere even near 6 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. But if we're doing something very, very high intensity, very, very explosive, then we need to extend that phase out. And the final speed and power phase, which is like the icing on the cake, for some athletes, you're doing Ironman, you don't need any speed and power. You're not sprinting out of junctions and trying to drop somebody. So we'd strip this speed and power work off completely. That would go completely in my mind. But for other, a track 400-meter runner, a track 800-meter runner, probably doing as much as 2 months worth of really powerful explosive work to try and get them used to that. So again, it depends on the athlete, it depends on their base, it depends on how long we've been working together. But those generally are the phases that I would work through. And in working through those phases, that really gives us a much clearer understanding of how we're going to build your training up. So we started to look at your strengths and weaknesses. What do you need for your performance? How do we build your training plan? All of these factors come in to start helping you thinking about physiology, what training you've got to do in order to get your optimized performance. And it's just all about focus all the time. So it then says, right, how do we structure your training? And as I said, don't want to talk about this tonight. I'm just going to cover one slide on it. We look at volume, we look at duration, we look at intensity, we look at specificity, and we look at recovery. We have to put those 5 factors in to get your training to maximize your performance. Now, before you even start training, we've got to go and do all the groundwork. We've got to look at the planning, we've got to look at the preparation, we've got to look at your strengths and weaknesses, we've got to look at what you're trying to target. And if you haven't done that and you just start going headlong in, we're going to run into problems. So it really is important, it's really, really valuable that we do that groundwork first. And if we can get that groundwork done, and we get that groundwork done early, that's where you're going to see the enhancements that you need. And as I say, if you want me to, I'll come back and we'll do a next seminar on this, and we can do a lot more detail in all these elements. So in my mind, and I think I've got it, it's that side of me, isn't it? We've got train smarter, not harder. Use your devices, use your focus. I've got my orange strap on. I should have put my purple strap on my watch tonight. But use your heart rate monitor, use your pace, use your power, use your perceived exertion, use your recovery markers, use your resting heart rate, use your weight. Take all of the data that you can. And if you don't want to crunch it yourself, get somebody else to look at it for you, and get an understanding of what you should be doing in your training to try and improve your performances. And quite often, and here's another one just popped into my head. And one of the guys at the weekend who wanted to go out and do a ride on, I think it was Friday last week, said, no, you've been too stressed at work, you've been too busy at work, you've not spent enough time with the family. I know you've got 2 hours you can go and ride on Friday. No, take a family day. Don't train, do something with the family. And in the end, he did a very easy recreational bike ride with the family for an hour and a half in London. And he said that was the best thing he needed. And it was exactly what the doctor ordered, and it worked for him precisely. So it's about sometimes resting better rather than training harder. It's backing stuff off. And there again, an athlete I've just started working with a few weeks ago, and already 2-3 weeks into her running, we've backed her down. I've brought the volume down. I've looked at recovery levels, and I've looked at trying to sort of nutrition out slightly. And already after 3 weeks, I'm seeing improvements in speed far quicker than I would have expected to, because what we're now doing is we're getting a training focus about training smart rather than going out and smashing and working hard and optimizing recovery. And these things for me are absolutely crucial in how we perform and how we help you improve. So every time you train, you should have a clear goal for that training session. What is the purpose of this session? And if coach is giving you, I don't know, let's say a rep session, 5-minute hard, 1 minute easy, or a distance hard and a recovery phase, what is the purpose of doing that? And because you've got a 5-minute hard effort, it might not be absolutely flat out maximum effort. It might be controlled pace. So understand what the session is about and try and perform that session to what the coach wants you to as best as you possibly can. Or if you're writing your own sessions, it's about having that focus. Why am I doing this session today? And where does it fit in with the rest of my week? Where does it fit in with the rest of my month? Where does it fit in with my long-term goals? So I'm actually building my fitness forward and really trying to improve. Then we need to think about hard days and easy days. And I've not mentioned this before other than briefly talking about rest and recovery. And again, that will come in when we talk training. But every day can't be a hard day. We've got to have days, either complete rest days or recovery days. Now, again, as I say, one of the problems I'm finding is that quite a lot of people are training indoors. Quite a lot of people are taking to the likes of Zwift, road run tours, where there's races and there's events and they're racing each other. And they're relentless. And again, it's sitting on a turbo. It's like riding through glue. You can't freewheel as you do, out on the road and recover. You stop pedaling, the bike stops. So you feel like you're constantly going. So every day ends up being a race day. Every day ends up being a hard day. And people then don't understand the difference between hard and easy. So again, it's evaluating and understanding what the focus of that specific session should be. Those sessions need to be targeted. What are you trying to hit? Is it an endurance session? Is it a threshold session? Is it a recovery session? Is it a pure power session? What is the session about? Make sure you know what you're doing and target what you're doing. Now, if you can't meet that objective, come back, reevaluate. Don't beat yourself up that you didn't meet your objective. Reassess. Was I too tired? Was I, not eating well? What has gone wrong that you've missed that session? If it was a crucial session, right, where do we replace it in the week? What do we take out? Where do we replace it with? Don't try and play catch up. Whoops, sorry, flicked too many there. So again, looking at mixing that effort and intensity to keep your body interested and active. And that's a bit like hard days and easy days. But again, it's being aware of, rather than doing everything at the same pace, that we get tedious, we get dull, and the body gets fatigued from it. We need to mix things around to get the most from your body in order that you perform at your best. But, and whilst I'm all about focused, I'm also about having unstructured and enjoyable days. So there'll be some days I'll say, wear your heart rate monitor, but don't look at it. Just go out and run. Go out and run somewhere different. Go out and run in the fresh air. Go out and ride. Go out and enjoy your training. And normally I'd say, go and run with a group that you didn't run with, or go and do something different that you wouldn't normally do, and get the enjoyment in your training as well. Now, obviously you can't group train at the moment, but it might be go and try a different route. Go and run the wrong way around the track, for instance. That's one thing I haven't done for a while. But, if you go to the track, there's nobody else there, run the wrong way around it. Go and do something that's, for me at the moment, it's been a case of, I'm lucky where we live. I've been spending more time on my mountain bike, and I'm enjoying it. I can go out with my son and I actually have an enjoyable ride for an hour or 2 hours. It's not a hard training session. There are bits that can be hard, bits where I push him up the hill so I can work quite hard, but it's about being out and enjoying myself. And then I'll start to enjoy the training again. And that for me is really important. But overall, don't overlook your recovery days. Don't constantly be driving for performance. Don't become so focused, so targeted, so anal about it that you get tunnel vision. You've got to allow your body chance to recover. So how do we improve your training? Well, first thing is put your shoes on the right way around and make sure you put your helmet on the right way around, and then we might get somewhere. But we've got to think about it, and just simple steps. And I'm winding up now. So you need to identify your needs. What do you need? What physiology do you need? What do you need to work on your own body to get the performance that you're looking to achieve? And that's crucial. So what do I need to do to improve? What are my weaknesses? And what does the event that I'm looking to be good at require me to be good at? And if those two match, that's great. Now, what other weaknesses can I improve on to make myself even stronger? If they don't, then you've clearly identified where your training needs to be. Set your objective goals. How many hours? What heart rate zone? What power band? Something that you can meet. Rather than go pie and I want to do 20 hours every week. That's just crazy. That's just ridiculous. Set something that you can meet. And if you don't meet it, you need to reevaluate it. But if you do meet it, that's great. And we'll do more. Will doing more actually help you out, or will it hinder you? So again, it's thinking about goals. It's thinking about what you're trying to do and how do we assess that. So it might be, can I run longer? Can I run further? Am I better at sticking in my heart rate zones? Am I better at sticking in my training zones? Can I meet that? Once I've done that, can I see the improvements? If I can't see the improvements, because going back to then look at needs. What else needs improving that I'm not seeing improvements from this? Target the specific training you need with specific specific adaptations you're looking for with specific training. And again, we'll talk about this when we talk training in the future. We can get quite heavy here. I don't want to, but if we know you need to improve endurance, there's no point in going out and doing, runs that are far too easy or far too hard. And one of the problems I find is people run too hard, people cycle too hard all the time. So it's making sure you're training at the right intensity. And by training at the right intensity, we'll get the adaptations that we need by being focused in the training that we want. But the training regimen has to be interesting and challenging. Otherwise, you're not going to want to do it. So it's got to have overload and recovery, but it's got to be fun to do and it's got to be challenging. Because if you don't, and it's not, and it becomes tedious and boring, it's not going to work for you. So these, for me, are the simple steps that we need to follow in order to get you your optimal performance. Obviously, once we've done all that, we then need to objectively evaluate progress. Now, there are things that I'm trying to be able to do. I'd love to see you in the lab when we can open up again, and the lab is, for me, the gold standard. But there are other methods that I'm looking at that we can use, some field-based tests, some heart rate based tests, just some time trial type efforts. I'm also looking at some other pieces of kit that I might be able to bring into my testing in the next 4 to 6 weeks that we can do remotely to really objectively evaluate how you're going, how you're progressing, how you're improving, so that we can help you out. But there are things that we can do that says, most people, even just little things. And there's one of the guys that I took on last October time, and he was going out and doing his steady run. He was focusing on heart rate rather than pace. And after about 3-4 weeks, there was one route that he'd do sort of once every week or so, that suddenly he was running that route 3 minutes quicker for a 45-50 minute run than he'd done 3-4 weeks earlier. It's like, well, you can clearly see that progress. You've run the same route, weather conditions aren't substantially different, you've averaged the same heart rate, you've kept within the zone, we can clearly see a difference. And it might be a case of using Strava segments on the road, it might be a case of doing Elk to Zwift on the bike, it might be a case of going and running a mile or a 5K, but there are ways that we can see whether you're improving. It might be a case of how you're feeling afterwards, how quickly you recover afterwards. It might be a case of what your heart rate's doing the next day. It might be a case of looking at weight. All of these factors are really important in a training diet and will tell us whether you're improving or not. So that's me for talking about training focus for tonight. If you haven't got them already, we've got our training books, which are still available for sale on the website, so sportstest.co.uk, and somewhere in there you will find our training books. Obviously, alongside of that, as soon as we can, we'll be up and running. We'll be running physiological testing again, and there are gift vouchers that are currently available. So if people do want to prepay for their next test, that would be absolutely fabulous. And we look forward to having you back in the lab as soon as we can. I can help people specifically with training program design. So, you can spend 20 minutes, half an hour with me on the phone, and I'll give you some pointers, I'll give you some targets, but more importantly, we offer a coaching service. So alongside of that, I can either, there's a variety of ranges of coaching where we can look at planning your sessions for you and actually feeding back on a regular basis, or we can come up with a plan on more of a training program design where I can give you an 8, a 10, a 12, a 16-week plan towards something. The training plans at the moment, in my mind, aren't very useful because we don't know how long lockdown's going to go on. I think that most of us as some point are going to get ill in the next 3 to 6 months. So again, it's very difficult to plan in that way, knowing that at some point you're going to get ill, because that's basically what's going to happen. So I'm tending to try and steer people at the moment towards coaching more away from the training programs, but that can be done for you. So I hope you've enjoyed this evening's session. I'm not sure, I think there's still about 17 to 20 of you online. Yeah, fabulous. I haven't had any questions. I'm not quite sure why there haven't been any questions, but maybe I've given you lots of information. If you've enjoyed this evening, please let us know. If I'm going to put in a cheeky request now, I'm not planning to charge you anything for tonight, but if you want to come along to coffee and buy me a coffee, that's ko.fi.com/sportstest. Have a quick check out and you can say thanks by buying me a coffee. It will be absolutely fabulous. But otherwise, I'm here to answer your questions if you have any. Over to you guys.
Gary Jane said that was a great session.
Brilliant. I haven't seen any comments, Joe.
No, it's no Q&A, just on chat at the minute.
Right, okay. Brilliant stuff. So do we need to just shut this down?
If anyone has got any questions, there's a little Q&A section at the bottom. There you go.
One question, ultra distance. Right, okay. No problems at all. Yeah, fire away. Go on. Pushing through the barriers, both physical and mental. I will try and answer that live. Do you want to? I'm going to try and answer this live, but I need a bit more of a specific question. I've got loads of time. We've done that 45 minutes, which for me is absolutely fabulous. Was there something specific you wanted me to try and answer there? One of the things, and this is probably something I'd like to cover more in a training seminar, or if we go on and do one, but it's I'm trying to preempt a question if it's going to pop up. It's about stepping up slowly, gradually, do I cover mental strength training? Right, okay. This is actually something that I would normally throw you onto one of the guys that I work with at times, Professor Andy Lane, who's over in Wolverhampton. And he's a sports psychologist of note. He's worked with a range of athletes in a huge different way, and this really isn't my area, my strength area. So I'm much more of a physiologist and how we get the physiology right. I think one of the key things, and if I pull Dave Hathaway in here, that's now just done his second double Ironman. It's partly about prepping the body so that when you're training, you can evaluate or you can anticipate what's going to happen before you actually get to the start line. So it's thinking about all those possible things that can go wrong, all those possible things that might not go wrong, but actually you want to be prepared for. So it's having that focus of actually saying, right, do I know how I'm going to feel? What have I got to do in order to push through this, to keep going? What incentives can I give myself? Can I be working with somebody else? But a lot of this, and I am now straying out my territory, which I don't like doing, is really, I would push you towards Professor Andy Lane. So if you want to, drop me a message and I can hook you up with him. Hopefully that's helped. Jane has just asked me a question. For some reason, I'm now trying to scroll. Do I do just a weight loss plan? Yes, I can. Sorry, that's Liz. Sorry, yes, Liz, I can do that. That's not a problem at all. I've got all your stats. If you send me an email later on, I can provide you with some information on what we need to target you with. And then there is a guy that I work with as well that can give you a little bit more information if we need to, in terms of vitamins and minerals and everything else like that. So yeah, Liz, just drop me an email to remind me, but I can very, very easily focus that. Jane, do I build training development plans for triathletes in all disciplines, i.e. swimming? So again, swimming isn't my strength. I am much more land-based, so I am pretty good at doing two things here. I'm pretty good at working with runners and cyclists. When it comes to swimmers, what I generally say to people, and again, there are two things I can do here. What I generally say to swimmers is you need to find yourself a decent swim coach who can look at your technique for you, because cardiovascular issues generally aren't the problem for swimmers. It is more technique related. And actually by doing more technique work, as we should be as runners as well, but by doing more technique work, you will actually improve your swimming. So it's actually being able to physically go and work with a squad, with an individual coach who can look after that for you. Now, in the past, I have provided my athletes with specific swim sessions where I've broken the sessions down in the same way, 100s, 200s, drill work and everything else like that. But again, I've got a pro triathlete that I'm currently coaching. So if you're, and all I've got there is a first name, so I don't know who you are, Jane, or which Jane I'm talking to. But if you're anywhere near Stafford, I have got a triathlete that I'm currently coaching who is a pro level triathlete, who has been a swim teacher for many years at a relatively high level. And I know he is prepared to do specific one-to-one poolside work with you and also provide sessions with you. So again, whilst I can't offer that personally, although I can give you some steer on it, again, we can build that into a plan if you need to work specifically on your swimming. So hopefully that's helped you out on that one. Liz, no problems at all. That's done that one. So we've done that one. Just clicking on done on these so I can see everything, I think. That's everything so far that's come in. Joe, have I missed anything? So my mouse.
Alex is.
Oh, Alex has just come through. Right, okay. Let's do. I've done that one. Done that one. Alex. Just realised you're too injured to run. Overweight, was due for Ironman staffs in June, but disarray in the next event with an ultra in August. What should you looking to focus on? Okay, Alex, I would be saying to you that what we've got to be doing is we've got to be, if you're too injured to run, and it really is, it's building the plan in a way that we focus on you enjoying your sport, Whether the ultra is going to happen in August or not might depend on the size and the scope on that event. But if you can't run at the moment, trying to build to do an ultra in August is possibly a little bit biting off more than you can chew. My suggestion would be that we need to look at a plan where you're doing as much endurance on the bike as we can do. We're keeping your training interesting. We're also doing some morning fasted sessions. And again, I think what we'll probably do is actually have a whole seminar on various options in nutrition, probably over 2 or 3 seminars. So I'd be focusing on endurance work to start with. I'd be keeping your training mixed. I'd probably trying to, if you can't run, and again, I don't know where you are with injuries and what the injuries are, but I'd probably be trying to think about doing some strength and conditioning work so that when you can get back into running, your body is not too much of a shock. And it would be focusing on a lot of endurance work on the bike, and particularly in bringing in some either sleep low sessions or morning fasted sessions, and really smartening up what we're doing in terms of nutrition. So, those are all things that we can help you out with as well if you need. Anthony, right. I'm coming onto it, Anthony. I'm just going to clear my screen a little bit, but my mouse keeps vanishing when I'm going over there. Done that one. Right, okay. I was saying this, I don't know if, I thought you were online quite early, Anthony, and I think this is a comment that I brought up quite early. My feeling is that we're in a situation where most events in 2020 are not going to happen. And I think if you start off with that mentality of it is unlikely that you're going to be racing this season, then and you get a positive mindset around that, and you're then prepared to say the plan is to build into spring or summer events in 2021, then we've got the right mindset. Now, actually, if you go ahead with that plan and you're following a good endurance plan to build your cardiovascular base, build your fitness, build your endurance capacity, reduce your body composition, your body fat, if all of a sudden stuff starts popping up later on in the season, it then becomes very easy to then switch your training to step up. Now, if we're looking at multi-day events, that's the sort of training that we need anyway, so there's no issues on that whatsoever. If it's a single day, it then depends on the events that you're doing. And I know you typically do a lot of sort of more sportive type events. So adding in the threshold work, it might be, and I can't imagine there's going to be much that's going to come on board that we're going to have less than 4 to 6 weeks notice on. So it might be that we just throw in a little bit of threshold work to keep your training mixed, and then it becomes very, very easy to switch to that race focus as soon as it happens. But at the moment, I would be looking at mental focus of being, right, I know I'm now preparing for the next 15 months as opposed to preparing for something for 2 or 3 weeks' time, and to try and do it in that way. So hopefully that's answered that one for you. Hey, Dan, great to hear from you, coming over from Jersey. Thank you very much. So the guys in Jersey, just for everyone that's listening, actually have a very, very strict, and it is the local government, the Jersey Parliament, well, it's not Parliament, but the Jersey government have got a 2-hour limitation for training. You told me without using the turbo, that's fine, that's not a problem at all. So the guys in Jersey have got a 2-hour window. Now, I would actually say to you, and I would challenge most people, that if you do one of my endurance sessions, for the most part, if it's properly focused, you don't need to do more than 2 hours. And I can tell you an anecdotal story, which I probably don't need to at this point, but I had a pro cyclist that I was working with 14 years ago, massively injured, chronically fatigued, and we ended up, he was doing probably 4 to 5 hours of training a week as a result of, but before he started with me, he came to me, he was absolutely fried, came to me, reduced his training down to about 4 to 5 hours a week. His team manager suddenly phoned him up and said, right, next week you're going to the Tour Down Under, or the Sun Tour, I can't remember which one it is, and it's got, the stage is like 8 hours, it's the longest pro stage in the world. And he's like, but I've not been on the bike for more than an hour and a half. And so look, you do 2 hours at steady endurance level, doesn't matter if it's on the turbo or out on the road, but you stay in that level, your cardiovascular fitness is going to be absolutely maximized. Okay, you don't have the time on your backside in the saddle, but 2 hours is almost optimal. So you don't need more than 2 hours to boost cardiovascular endurance and to boost the aerobic base. 2 hours is absolutely perfect. The problem is actually if you start training much more than 2 hours, you're now absolutely ripping apart your glycogen stores, and it can take longer to recover from, as opposed to you being properly recovered. So again, if we've got to be careful with nasty viruses going around and all these sort of things, you don't want your immune function to be suppressed, so you probably don't want to train for more than 2 hours anyway. If you are absolutely adamant that you needed longer on the bike than a 2-hour session, I would then do something, and you've told me not to use the bike, but I would do something where you'd maybe do half an hour to an hour on the turbo, and then you'd head outdoors. So you can actually extend that, or you do your warm up for 20 minutes, half an hour on the turbo, where you're progressively getting up, flick from one bike to the next, because I know you've got a lot of bikes out in the gym at work there. You flick from one bike to the next, and you're out the door for your 2 hours of steady endurance. And as you come back home, you hop on the watt bike for another 15 to 20 minutes cool down. So again, you extend the session in that way. So that would be the way that I'd try and do it for you. But actually, you don't need more than 2 hours. So I think 2 hours is probably quite a nice window. I know a lot of guys over here doing a lot more than that, and I think some of that is just to fill time in the day where they've been furloughed, or they've got nothing else to do. And the way I feel at the moment, if I could go out on my bike for 6 hours and lead the children, I probably would. Anyway, guys, I hope that has been useful. I've had some really positive comments back already. A couple of people have sent me messages. No problems, Dan, at all. So thank you all for coming along this evening. Hopefully you found that useful. And any further questions, drop us a message, get in touch. Please let us know if you found it useful. Please let us know if it could be improved in any way, shape or form. And if you'd like us to, I will have a chat with Joe and we can set a date for the next one.